Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girja. I'm Girja Bhargav Patel, your host for Law Chat, and I am so excited for you to join us today. I have some amazing guests on Law Chat, and they're here to share their experiences and entrepreneurial journey with us, and through their storytelling, mentorship with us, because that is the whole point. We are all entrepreneurs and we're all on a journey, and learning from one another is the best way for us to move forward in our journey as well. And I have amazing guests who are so willing and ready to share their stories with us, their challenges and their victories and their achievements, and also their mindset. I just can't wait to share that with you, and I also just can't wait to have that conversation with them. It's such a privilege to have each and every one of them here with us today, and also it's such a privilege to have you listening in and tuning in. So let's dive in to Law Chat with Girja.
Do you get bogged down with what should be done and are afraid to go against the grain and afraid to think that what you are doing is okay to do, even though it's unique? Well, today's guest, Stacey Shipman, helps us to shed the formality. She is a podcaster for Shed the Formality, and she's an entrepreneur where she helps you navigate the blocks in our head and to forge forward and step out of your conventional bubble. She helps you think of ways and figure out how to navigate yourself in areas that seem scary. And I'm so excited to actually learn some tips on how to do that, and also to learn about your entrepreneurial journey. Stacey, welcome to the show. And I am so excited to have this conversation with you. We just had a conversation. We just had a conversation on Monday.
Yeah.
I was recording for your podcast, and I'm just so happy to have you back here with me today.
I know this is fun. I have to remember that I'm on your show today and not sometimes, I don't know if you have this happen, Girja, but I sometimes go into question mode even though I'm the guest. So
yeah, I totally do that too.
To be here.
Absolutely happens. So I gave a super brief description of who you are and the amazingness of you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on to it?
The one thing, just from a specificity perspective, is when I talk about shedding formalities, it's really about the beliefs and behaviors that we have learned over the years, whether it's from a job or family or past experience, that tend to stifle our personality and ideas. So my work is really all about helping people feel more comfortable and natural, and quite frankly, have more fun with things like speaking, networking, sales, all of those verbal interactions that we have that can be awkward and anxiety provoking for people.
And so true on all of that, especially, I think we talked about this on Monday, sales equals awkward. Like for me, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I would love to also later on talk about some tips on how to overcome those fears and how to really become more comfortable in a space that's very awkward. But before we do that, how did you get into this area? How did you start dabbling into this space?
Well, maybe no surprise that my biggest block when I left corporate, so I had a corporate career, but when I left in 2006 to pursue my business or to work for myself, it was that I didn't know how to promote myself. I didn't know how to put myself out there. I didn't know how to network. I didn't know how to communicate my ideas, my vision, my business. And not only did I not know how, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So it stemmed from my own needs and development to have to build those skills. And I learned that it takes work, and I've always been willing to do the work. So I didn't want to go back into a corporate position, and that desire was far greater than the fear of stepping into some of these interactions, like you said, selling and the networking that felt really uncomfortable for me. So it was all based on my own development.
Right. And so in corporate, what were you doing, if you don't mind sharing? What was your job description there?
Market research. I was behind the scenes, and it was more qualitative. I'm not a statistician by any stretch. So it was more qualitative in nature, but I was developing surveys, was looking at the data sets. I was making sense of that information for my internal clients who were analysts so that they could present to clients and customers and have better sales conversations. I wasn't the one, I was just sharing information.
Right.
And so I quit actually because the company I worked for wanted all of us to become salespeople. And I was like, oh no, that's not what I do. And so I left rather abruptly.
How ironic is that?
Very. It's not lost on me. Not lost on me.
But I think it helped you boost yourself into entrepreneurship, a place that you're definitely serving. I always believe, entrepreneurship is a lot of work. It can be scary, it can be risky, but at the same time, you're shedding those tears, that energy, that sweat is yours for you, for your business, and not for somebody else's gain.
It's a different kind of stress.
Yeah.
And, not having someone else tell you what you're supposed to do. And you really can take charge of what you're doing, which, to be honest, is easier said than done. And it has taken me a really long time. I still play that mantra. It's like, you're in charge, Stacey. You're in charge, Stacey. You can create what you want for who you want and how you want. Yeah.
And that's so true. I think whether you come from corporate background or not, what happens is that we are the people that are pressing that navigation button saying, okay, this is the next step. This is the next step. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I really question, like, is this really the next step?
We don't know. Sometimes it's a step backwards. Sometimes it's a leap. I know.
And I almost feel like if I had to do it for somebody else, it's very clear to me. But when I got to do it for myself, oh my gosh, it is a whole nother story. Even with marketing, I can easily market for someone else. But when I have to do it for myself, no, thank you. So
that is a very common conversation that I have. It's so much easier to prop somebody else up.
Yeah. And so going back to how you started this company for yourself, essentially, because you're just like, I don't know how to market myself. So how did that look like in the beginning stages of starting that business?
In the beginning, my offer, I was in the wellness field, actually. So I left the corporate marketing and market research to pursue my passion at the time for wellness. So teaching yoga, personal training, fitness classes, hiking groups. I was in that space. And what it looked like the first time I walked into a networking meeting, my heart was racing so much that once I actually got in, I didn't say much. I kind of went into market research mode, asking questions of everyone else and listening and taking in information. But I didn't really talk about myself. So that's one part of it. And so people often talk about the importance of visibility. I was visible, but I wasn't talking about what I offer. So then nobody knew why they would want to talk to me again. So that was one piece of it. And then once I felt more comfortable sharing what I was doing, it was, I'm a fitness trainer, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a yoga teacher. And I don't know, that shuts down a conversation really fast. Nobody wants to talk to the personal trainer because they automatically think you're going to judge them for what they're eating at lunch, for the cookie they had for dessert. I certainly wasn't, but that's the mentality that people have. So talking about my work in that way didn't lead anywhere. And I had a lot of ideas. I had a lot of different ideas about how I wanted to run my business or what I wanted to create. I never had a plan. Like I said, when I quit my job, it was very emotional. It was not because I had this well laid out plan of where I was going and what I was going to do. It was highly emotional. And I was like, I'm just going to teach yoga. Okay. So I don't recommend doing what I did. But I had all these ideas and different ways of viewing the world. And then talking about those different ways, so it wasn't a coach. I was no longer talking about personal training. I was moving more into media. I had a local TV show. I was starting to dabble in online video at a time when that was all very new, podcasting when it was all very new, running a blog when it was all very new, and people around me didn't get it. So when they'd say, how can we help you? I'm like, just send people to the website. It's an informational resource, and there'll be all sorts of information on how to live a better life, a more healthy life. People didn't get it. Back then, 15 years ago, that wasn't as big as it is now. It was just going through all of that and hearing the questions. Well, how are you making money? How am I supposed to refer you? I don't understand what you do. Are you a coach? And I was like, and it was exhausting. So from there, that was kind of round 2 of my awkward and anxiety around all of this. And it's like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, it's so clear to me. How come they're not getting it?
Right.
And so at every stage, it was another step for me to develop, to read more, to hire coaches, to go to different conferences and programs around marketing. And how do you really, what does it take to get people to get what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
An ongoing step in.
Yeah. But it's really interesting what you're saying though, because I think it happens to all of us, right? We go through different phases in our business. The first phase is, my idea is so awesome, I'm just going to go for it. And then you start a website and you're like, wait, nobody's coming to this website. I did that. And I think the reality is that you think, oh, it's there. But then my daughter, who is like 9 years old, said, and she was probably like 8 or 7 when she said this to me then, she was like, but how do they know your website is there unless you market it? And I'm like, wait, duh.
What?
Like, we have different phases. And I think each phase you realize more, and it's in and of itself, it's like a market research, right? When you're like, well, I thought I gave the information. And then you're like, okay, I need a copywriter who can actually like speak to my audience, who can actually speak the words of my audience. And so they can like grab their attention.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation.
I know you said you had challenges. So how did you overcome any type of mindsets that you might have had that were also blocking growth for you?
I focus less on my mindset because honestly, and we touched on this on my podcast, I think it was more around my attitude and making sure I had more of a growth oriented mindset. So I'm a very curious person, probably stemming from market research. And I would always ask, why can't I do this? What is my, like, what's keeping me from doing this? What's the problem? That's kind of how my brain works. I'm always very curious. And I tell people all the time, get more curious. If you're getting stopped by something, whether it's a thought or a behavior, get curious about it. What's it doing there? How's it serving you? Because sometimes it's helpful. So I looked at it more as like attitude and curiosity, and having a learning and growth oriented attitude, and also being incredibly frustrated and going to, my husband is still a big supporter. I'm like, why can't I do this? What is wrong with me? He's like, check out this book, check out this resource. I had joined Toastmasters before I even quit my job as a way to start building my skills and getting over the fears. So I think for me, it's always been about doing the work. If something matters to me, I will take the steps to do the work. And in this case, and so that was true when I, got interested in fitness in the beginning to lose weight. I did the work. When I wanted to run a marathon, I ran the miles that led up to that marathon. I went to school and got my degrees. I had the job, all the things. And this really became no different. It was, okay, I need to learn how to promote my ideas because these are important to me and I know they're useful for other people. How do I do this? So get curious, get support, and find those people who can then refer you and send you to other resources for development and do the work. Step in. Yeah. I actually just came across a video. Facebook always pops up the memories. And about 5 years ago, I posted a video on Facebook because I had hosted a women's retreat and a full day conference style program. And a lot of people asked me, how'd you do this? How'd you make it happen? I've always thought about doing this. So I posted this video and today it had 3 things. It was have a clear vision, know where you want to go, see it every single day in your mind. Have relationships. So build those relationships before you need them. Do the networking, reach out on social media, have a podcast, build that trust and credibility, and then take imperfect action, baby steps all along the way. And every step, whether it's taking a class, hiring a coach, saying yes to a podcast and building your skills, hopefully takes you where you want to go. And that road is windy. So it's I don't have a step-by-step process. People ask me this all the time, but it was a lot of stepping in, saying yes, and then saying, that doesn't work for me, so let's try something else.
Yeah. I love how you said, do the work, step into it, because I think that's the biggest block that we can place in front of ourselves, is not to make that first move, not to make the first step. When you make that first step, you're not looking at 1,000 steps ahead of you, but you just need to take that first step. And then the next step will come. And it makes it easier. It also takes away the fear, because you're like, okay, this is not that bad. This is not that scary. I can do this. And of course, there'll be twists and turns to it too, but you'll have the experience of the past steps to help you manage those twists and turns also.
It's a great point, because I often tell people, because our lives are in evolution, and every time we do take a step, we learn and we grow and we evolve, and we become a better, different, newer version of ourselves. And it's important to recognize that every time we go through that cycle, we get to a new spot where we've grown, but we're entering a new phase. So it's still something we've not maybe done before or experienced. And I often tell people, look backwards. What have you already accomplished? What are the things you have done in your life already that you've overcome? And that can sometimes, really put you in more of a grounded place to say, okay, I've done hard things before, and I've done the work before, and I can do it again. And I need to go back through that cycle and say, curiosity, support, what resources, what do I need to learn, and what do I need to do? And what potentially new relationships do I need? Yeah. The ones that got you where you are now may not be the ones that get you to the next step.
Right. Absolutely on point. So now your podcast, and I think a lot of the, what you also teach and help others with, is to really let go and relinquish the formal protocols that are stifling their personality and ideas. And so how do you help in that? And what is the purpose behind that?
So I'll start with the purpose. The purpose behind it is that what I've learned through my own journey, especially coming from corporate, coming from a family that had a lot of beliefs about how we're supposed to show up in the world, and nobody needs to know your business. And, if you want to be financially successful, work isn't fun. I mean, I grew up with a lot of beliefs that served me for a time, but then they didn't. And then coming from a business world, we learn a lot of behaviors that, again, over time, you start to realize, or at least when I left that world, I was like, God, that does not work for me anymore. And then thinking about it didn't really work for me in those moments either. And so what happens is, I believe that we at our core, we know who we are. Like, we are who we are at our core. For me, it's expressive. I'm an expressive person when the environment allows me to be, when I feel comfortable and safe in that environment. And what happened to me, and what I see happen to a lot of people I work with, is that the environment teaches you something, or an experience creates a story, and we build up these walls to protect ourselves. And they could be beliefs, behaviors, past experiences, and they keep us from being truly who we are, and from putting that person in front of people. And when we are acting like somebody that we are not, whether it's someone we're trying to be or someone we think we're supposed to be, oh my God, there's so much tension that goes into acting like that. And so what I learned is that it takes work and strength to shed that, to say, no, I don't believe that anymore. To say, no, that behavior doesn't fit for me anymore. And I'll give you some practical examples in a moment. But it takes strength to be able to shed and shake that off, the conventions and status quo, so that you can do things in the creative way that you set out to do. Couple of examples. I've worked with people who had bad public speaking experiences, and so that story replays itself every time they give another presentation. So we talk through a little bit about, what's the, what happened? What'd you learn from it? Is it still true? Is it true that when you get up in front of another audience, the same thing's going to happen? And how can you make sure that it doesn't happen? So we talk them, I talk them through a new way of looking at the experience. And then there's other behaviors. A simple one I often use is, people giving presentations using a PowerPoint, but they don't like PowerPoint. Don't use a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Use some other tool that fits you better, right? That's very practical. When I host networking events and go networking, I'm a big believer that the question, what do you do, should not be the first question we ask people. I think it shuts down a conversation more than opens it up. So there's very simple things, sales. Networking is not selling. Selling is selling. They're very different. So that's a belief and a behavior people have that if we drop it, makes networking feel more comfortable. And sales, because now you're in a sales conversation. Looking at sales, for example, as a way to solve a problem and matching the person who has a problem with what your solution is. So it's all different. Some of it can be really deep and go way back, which I'm not a therapist, so I don't deal with any of that. The healing, I would refer that out. But then some of it's very practical and basic about some of the tools and ways that we show up in the world that just don't feel right for us. And we quite frankly, shouldn't have to do it. If it doesn't feel right for us, we're not going to do a good job for other people. And we need to, be able to present that as well.
Yeah. Okay. I have a lot of questions. So my first question, I'm like, don't forget. That's what I'm thinking in my brain. But my first question is, what would be that first thing you ask? Not, hey, what do you do? Because I actually don't like that question myself. I find it very, I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. So what would be a good question to ask? Like the first two questions you would want to ask somebody if you're meeting them?
I've been asked this a lot lately. Okay. So what I tell people is, so if you're in person, because I know now the world's opening up. So if you're in person at an event, I think a twist on that is either, what brings you here? How do you know the host? Something benign like that can be a good conversation starter. But one that I particularly enjoy is, so what energizes you about your work? What do you love about what you do? Which still gets at a little bit what you do, but it's a very different, it's a different angle. And it feels, I think, more genuine because now you're coming from a place of, I love my work and here's why, versus a more salesy, well, I'm a coach, consultant, trainer, lawyer. And that feels like, I don't know. For me, it always felt like, I feel like I'm selling them something, but I'm not yet because we're not in that place. So getting at those different perspectives can create more genuine connection, which then opens up the opportunity to say, so tell me more about what you do. And then that feels a little more natural. When I host my own programs, I always have conversation starters. I have different activities because I know that a lot of the people who come to me to work with me feel awkward, anxious, reluctant about doing these things. I was that person, so I can empathize and have learned that the setting matters and how can I create the best setting for people. So I make it easier. I offer the conversation starters, different ones. Sometimes it's like, if you could pick a theme song for your life or your business, what would it be and why? I try to keep it light and fun and provide a relaxed opportunity for people. Not all facilitators think that way. When it comes to networking, a lot of people think, get a client, get a referral, gotta go. And that's not how, I come from more of a relationship focused perspective, and that takes a while.
Yeah. But I do think networking is relationship building. It is a place to build those connections, and not a place to sell yourself, but a place to be authentic in the way where you are showcasing what you do, but in a way where the other person can find connectivity with you. It's kind of going back though, just rewinding a little bit, I know that we talked about how did you get into this marketing, into this business, but I feel like you have a very different twist to what you do, because you're telling people to get out of those bubbles, get out of what you think you should be doing, and get into something what you want to do. So how did you land up in that arena where you're teaching that instead of just teaching the conventional ways of doing things?
I think it's been my own experience. So the Shed the Formality message just came up last summer 2020. Because of the pandemic, everything in my business and what I had been doing changed. I lost all the business I had. So I hired somebody to help me refresh, because I always knew that what I was doing, I was teaching public speaking and presentation skills for small businesses. And I'm like, how did I get here? This is not, presentation skills is not what I want to teach. And I found that when I would go in, someone hired me and I'd do a workshop, and people would ask me, like, how do I get rid of ums and ahs? What do I do with my arms? All the typical things. And I was like, who cares? Like, I didn't care about those things. My questions were always, what's your relationship to your audience? What's your relationship to your message and the ideas? And what's your relationship to yourself? And if you get those three in place, then all the other stuff and you practice, all the other stuff is going to fall into place. Mm-hmm. And so my thought process behind these things was very different. And then the results people got were very different. Nobody ever said, well, what they said was, A, I didn't know I needed this. B, I've worked with these people for 5, 6, 7 years, and I feel like I actually know them now. And sometimes I would hear, you know what? It's not that I don't like public speaking. I think it's the environment where I'm speaking. I always walked in a stranger to these people, but a lot of times I'd leave and they'd give me hugs. And that teaching, team building and presentation skills. So I've always been one to challenge the status quo. And last summer, the copywriter helped me see that this is really what I've always done. I've always challenged it. Mm-hmm. And from when I was 12 years old, I can remember times like, wow, that seems silly. I don't want to do it. Why do we have to do that? Mm-hmm. So I've had tons of projects over the years, entrepreneurial projects, where I had to promote my ideas. And every time I approached them, none of them were so different than what other people were doing. The women's retreat I hosted was a lot of yoga and meditation. That happens all the time. But it was the approach I took to that. No PowerPoints allowed. Highly experiential. Wear your yoga clothes. Just the way that I presented it and designed it was very different than what a lot of people, at least where I live in the Boston area, had seen before. Because typically you sit in a room, you look at a PowerPoint, you're bored to death. You don't really get to talk to anybody. And I did not want that to happen. So it's been something that's been part of me forever.
Yeah.
And from a marketing and business perspective, just came to light last summer.
That's awesome. Because I know it was called Engage the Room before, right? And then I guess it shifted over to Shed the Formalities, which I love, because I think, we spoke about this on Monday. Well, when I spoke to you for your podcast, that it was kind of like that even for me, because I am so against the grain. Like, my legal practice is so against the grain of what your typical lawyer is doing. And so sometimes it is worrisome, not in a bad way, but in a way where you're doubting yourself, where you're just like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this? And, if you've had professional training in anything, there is a box that you have to fit into. Even when you're going to competitions in school, there's a box you have to fit into, and you have to check mark all those boxes until somebody doesn't, but they do such a brilliant job that new boxes are created. And I think that's the thing. Like, we shouldn't be afraid, but we are taught to be afraid if it's against the grain. So how do you help your clients to not be afraid? How do you help them shed that formality?
The word that comes up in a lot of my work these days is I give people permission. I give them permission to tell a different story. I give them permission to not use PowerPoint. I give them permission to show up as who they are. So it's really about feeling, what I'm hearing. And I think it's true for me too, is, do you feel like you have the permission to do that, to step out of the typical box? And that's where I always say, we can teach people skills all day long on how to be a better salesperson, how to be a better speaker, whatever, networker, whatever it is. But if the environment doesn't allow you to step into your creativity, your creative way of doing that, expressing your ideas creatively, expressing yourself genuinely and with emotional intelligence, then all the skills don't really matter. So for me, it's, what I'm skilled at, my true expertise is creating that space. Mm-hmm. And then welcoming people in, whether it's one-to-one on a podcast or one-to-one with a client or in a group setting. My expertise is creating the space. It's not teaching a step-by-step system. Mm-hmm. It's saying, hey, come on in. You are welcome as you are. And oh, by the way, if you don't want to use that PowerPoint, shake that off and let's figure out what's going to work for you to give the best presentation at that conference or on that podcast or whatever. Or let's figure out the best story. If you don't want to use data, let's figure out how else you can talk about your work. Mm-hmm. So it's really more of it's a welcoming in. It's about being aware of what's holding you back, having some accountability to say, okay, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to own my part in this, and I'm willing to shake it off, and I have the desire to shake it off. And then it's an exploration. Mm-hmm. It's, what do I want? Who am I? And how do I show that to people? And then what are the best ways to get my message across and to build those relationships? And a lot of it becomes experimental. It's like, well, you're doing this way over here. You're like all tense and tight and you're using that PowerPoint. Let's just go big. Let's go crazy. Let's play music. Let's dance. And it's like, whoa, too much. Okay, let's bring it back. So let's figure out. But the other part of that is also digging in, like I said, to who you are. So I always, I'm a question asker. It comes from my background in research. So I want to know, what makes you tick? What hobbies do you have? Tell me about your past. What have you done before? What captures your attention when you're not working? These all inform ways that we can show up and get our message across with people. I'm pretty open about, I take stand-up comedy classes. I take singing lessons. I want to bring some of that into my work. Mm-hmm. Because that's how I continue to shed formalities and conventions. So that part of us, though, I love fitness still. I don't teach it anymore, but I still do it every day. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually turning my business into quote unquote training studio with conditioning classes so that you can come in and virtually. So you can come in and practice public speaking with power hours. So you actually get, kind of writing or the creative part done. So I'm modeling it after something of interest to me and then putting it out. But, it's not your typical fitness. It's more speaking and interacting.
That. Yeah.
So we have to be able to pull that out of ourselves or have it pulled out for us, because that's what really helps us stand out. And when we can bring those pieces of who we are and not have to hide that part of us, that's what I think is really attractive, especially in business. We stand out so much more.
Mm-hmm. I feel so motivated right now by what you just said, because I have like 1,000 ideas going through my brain all the time.
Yay.
I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is so great. This is so great. And then when I ask around or talk, sometimes people are like, no, that's a terrible idea. Or they'll be like, no one's going to want that. But then there's a part of me that's like, no, but there is somebody that wants that. I'm sure there is somebody that wants that. And so then I'm always wondering, like, am I being naive and hopelessly optimistic, or am I just wanting to follow something that I truly believe in? And yes, maybe you're not my client, and that's why you're saying that to me. But I feel very inspired after I just spoke to you.
Like, yay.
Yeah.
But you said something, though, I think is really important, especially because we're starting to talk about sales earlier and how awkward that can be for people. What I learned about selling my ideas is that I've got to believe wholeheartedly in them. I know some people can sell anything. My husband can sell anything. And I watch in amazement. I think it's awesome. I cannot do that if I don't wholeheartedly believe. Yes, that's your husband too? Yeah. I think it's awesome. I love watching it. I just can't do that. So I have to believe, like you just said, wholeheartedly. And if I believe and I show the energy behind that belief, and I'm presenting something. It's like, this is the vision. This is what, this is what I imagine. And we need you, you want to come along for the ride. The right person is going to find that really hard to say no to.
Yeah, you're right. I love this. Okay. I'm so because
that's what I've learned about sales.
Yeah. Like I've had stuff that's just been sitting and I'm like, okay, I'll get to it. Not because I'm being lazy, but more so because I'm just like, I really wanted this year to be cultivating what I've already created. And so I'm like, I'm going to get to that. But then there's a part of me that's constantly wanting to create, constantly wanting to do things. And so I've had to like simmer that one down a little bit. But this has been, I'm glad you just shared this information with us. So this is really cool. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit though, because this is Law Chat. And so I do love talking a little bit about the law.
Okay.
But has there ever been a time when you're like, gosh, I really wish I had something already done, or you've already put it into place because you're just like, yes, I need to make sure this legal aspect is protected or taken care of?
I think for in my work, as I was thinking about this question, Georgia, the biggest thing for me from a legal perspective has been in the past, we're more of like speaking and training contracts. Is all the information in this document, and are people reading it? And then if they're not reading it, like I just had more recently this year, actually, I had contracted to do a online program. I had very specific needs. I talked to the person, I put it in the document about, using breakout rooms and making the program interactive, because I don't like talking at people for an hour. And he was in agreement, and it was in the thing, and he signed it. And then the time came, and he said, and I, reminded him and did all the prep work to make sure that we would be set up for that. And he said, well, we haven't done anything like that yet, and I don't want to start with yours. And I was like, we
talked about it.
We talked about it. It was in the document. You signed it.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that's actually happened to me. So I actually didn't know. I was like, so what grounds do I have here? Like, I did it, and I did it his way, and I hated every minute of it. And I'll never do it again. But I guess the thing that came up was like, how do I really use the contract in this case to push this without being a jerk? That's been like, that was something that came up.
Yeah. And I think it's tricky because, we can have I love contracts. I think they're a brilliant tool in your tool belt of strategy for your business. But I also believe sometimes when it comes to like that point of like contention and the point of where you need to make a decision, and you're not really because if you don't move forward, you might be in breach of your contract also.
Right.
Even though they're breaching their contract already, but that doesn't give you the right to breach your contract. FYI to anybody listening, because now both claims can be going against each other if you go to court. And so that becomes a problem. So it really comes down to negotiating again, even though you already have a contract, but just saying, hey, listen, you promised to this. We talked about this. And also having terms in your contract where where you can easily say, if there is something that is material to you in that contract, and if it's not done a certain way, then you can say, then you have the right to terminate it immediately.
Right.
And just kind of like follow up that little clause over that way you're not breaching the contract. If you do say, I'm not going to show up for your presentation because this is what I wanted. Yeah. And that's hard. It's hard because there's so many other factors, right? Your reputation, your business reputation, which is, I think, so much more important than other things too. And you bit the bullet. You did what you had to do, but now you're never going to do it again.
You're never going to do it again. And that extra clause you just mentioned, but you're so right. I mean, it was, I was like, well, I don't want to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Not do it.
Yeah.
So.
Because human nature, you want to be nice. You want to be, you want to try to be accommodating. Most people are like that. Very few are what you see on TV where it's like, okay, I'm going to pretend to threaten you. And I mean, that's not true. That doesn't happen.
It wasn't that much money either to have to go, with anybody, so.
You really weigh it out. So thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of times, that is a problem, that people get into a corner and they just don't know what to do.
Right. And like from my angle of shedding formalities and how you put yourself out there, that's where it's like I knew what I needed to do a good job, but the setting wasn't, the other people weren't creating a setting for me to do that. So that's where we need both.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Well, I feel like you're disrupting the industry on so many different levels. Like you are, I ask my guests coming in the questionnaires that I send out, like, how are you disrupting the industry? And I just feel like you shared that with us a second ago by saying, well, I'm offering, a place where you can work out, or a place where you can also, exude your energy alongside learning how to speak and how to like do things the way you want to do them. So I think this is, I can't wait to see how you build that out and, where you're going from there. But before we head out, I do always like to ask some fun questions. And I know you are pursuing some side hobbies of yours. Yeah. So what is this one singing hobby or passion that you are pursuing?
Singing is my favorite. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a singer and a dancer, and I was super shy, so I never pursued voice. And then in 2014 or 15, I was looking to take the next step in my development as a communicator, and I needed to breathe better. So I was introduced to this voice teacher who focuses a lot on the well-being aspects of singing, which I also loved. And I have been taking lessons with her ever since. I have sung solos in, voice recitals over the years, and personally have learned how to shed a lot of beliefs and behaviors about my own voice and the power that it has and the volume that it has. So it's been awesome musically and personally to live out a childhood dream, but also professionally as a business leader to step into my power more. I think in song. Someone says something to me and I immediately have a song to go with the thought. I tend to create parody lyrics with different music that I enjoy. And so I love singing.
I truly love that, because I think a lot of us have dormant passions and gifts, and we don't want to tap into them because we feel like, oh, time is gone, we're too old, or, oh, I'm too scared, I'm so bad at it, all these negative things. And I just love how you are not only teaching and preaching your, shedding the formalities and letting go of the things that hold you back, but you're also practicing it in so many different areas of your life. And I think that is such a testament to what you believe in and also to the business that you are leading. So I think that's so fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to reiterate, because you talked about your ideas a few moments ago and how many ideas you have and how much you want to create. And then just to tie into what we're talking about here, we can create for the sake of creating. Like it can be a fun, joyful experience. It doesn't have to be for business. It doesn't have to be for any purpose other than the act. And I hope people recognize that. I mean, I sing because it's joyful. And if I bring it into my work, it's because it's joyful. I don't need to make money singing.
Yeah.
Probably never make money singing.
Yeah.
But if it's, if I feel joy, it's going to bring joy to other people if I share it with them. So we can do it because it feels good.
There's so much power to that, though, being joyful in the moments, even in the moments that aren't so joyful in the reality, but you're still finding joy in them. But then also being intentionally joyful and bringing those aspects into your life. And so kind of like one of my last questions before we, finish up here is, what is the one thing that anchors you, though, when things are hard? What anchors you?
There's actually a couple things. My yoga and meditation practice anchor me. They get me grounded and refocused and just like exhaling. They get me breathing more deeply and regrounded. So definitely those. And my husband and friends and family support network, people that I can just, relax and laugh with. And there is no expectation of performance.
Yeah, totally. Well, how can the listeners reach out to you and connect with you? What is the best way to say hi and say you're awesome?
Yeah. So you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn at Stacey Shipman. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And the website is staceyshipman.com. It's STACEY. And the podcast is there and all the things. So I love hearing from people. And so definitely get in touch.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to have everything in the show notes so people can reach out to you and connect with you as well. I have enjoyed our conversation so much. I am leaving inspired, and I'm pretty sure you're leaving inspired too. And I just wanted so thankful that you have been a guest today with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to talk to you. And I look forward to seeing what you do with all your inspiration.
Something soon. Thanks, Stacey.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girja. I love these kind of stories and conversations where we can be real, honest, and open, and having fun at the same time. I hope you are inspired and motivated to keep doing the amazing work you are doing. If this is something that gave you all those feels and then some, truly motivated and inspired for you, you can show your love in all or one of these ways. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with your community and tell them about it, or share with somebody that can benefit from it. I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Law Chat, and until then, keep moving forward. Bye.